The regulations implemented with a smoking ban do not emerge from a vacuum, and the activities that are often necessary for the enactment of a ban may themselves lead to reductions in active and secondhand smoking. The health of non-smokers after the implementation of a smoke-free policy can be affected not only by reduced secondhand smoke exposure, but also by concurrent changes attributable to increased awareness in the community, increased spontaneous cessation, and higher cessation success rates.
Investigators also compared those microbes with those living in 52 other soil samples taken from all around the planet. The park had organisms that also exist in deserts, frozen tundra, forests, rainforests, and prairies. Antarctica was the only area that had microbes that did not overlap with those found in Central Park. Only a small percentage of the park's microbes were found to be already listed in databases.
In his landmark account, first published over 20 years ago, the author argues that the ignorance and lethargy of the poor are direct results of the whole situation of economic, social and political domination. By being kept in a situation in which critical awareness and response are practically impossible, A smoking ban is a public policy that includes criminal laws and health regulations that prohibit smoking in certain public places and workspaces. There are varying definitions of smoking employed in this legislation. The strictest definitions define smoking as being the inhalation of any tobacco substance, while the loosest define smoking as possessing any lit tobacco product. Writers may make the mistake of making all their sentences too compact. Some have made this accusation against the prose of Gibbon. An occasional loose sentence prevents the style from becoming too formal and allows the reader to relax slightly. Loose sentences are common in essay, unforced writing, but it is a fault when there are too many of them. While far fewer people these days write letters and therefore have less use for stamps, there are still a few categories of stamp which attract collectors. Stamps in common use for an indefinite period until the price goes up are called definitive issues, while a more collectible type of stamp is the commemorative issue, honoring people, events and anniversaries. When the young artist was asked about his drawing, he explained that he had started by taking a photograph of himself sitting by a window at home. He then drew his face from the photograph and replaced the buildings which were outside the window with trees. This gave the picture a softer, more artistic background. In many countries, there are still large coverage gaps and inadequate benefits. One challenge, discussed by meeting participants, is the long-term willingness and capability of governments to invest in the expansion of social protection to all, including informal and gig economy workers and women who may work their whole lives but receive no pension. Together, the policy framework and benchmarking data are intended to provide countries with the practical tools needed to help turn the ambition of inclusive growth into a practical and measurable plan of action. At the same time, they yield several important conclusions for national policy and international economic cooperation, which the report articulates in considerable depth. We make children feel proud of themselves and motivate them without the unwanted side effects. We believe a better approach is to use temporal comparisons, encouraging children to compare themselves with their past self rather than with others, such as by assessing how much they have learned or improved themselves. When children compare themselves with their past self, they don't compete with others. When buying a house, for example, it's best to let our unconscious mull over the many variables. But when we're picking stocks and shares, intuition often leads us astray. The trick is to determine when to lean on which part of the brain, and to do this, we need to think harder and smarter about how we think. What can history tell us about contemporary society? Generally, in the past, even in Europe until the 18th century, it was assumed that it could tell how any society should work. The past was the model for the present and the future. It represented the key to the genetic code by which each generation produced its successors and ordered their relationships. The training of an actor is an intensive process which requires curiosity, courage and commitment. You will learn how to prepare for rehearsal, how to rehearse, and how to use independent and proactive processes that inform you to do the best work possible for both stage and screen. Welfare has a special political meaning to the United States because it refers to how the poor receives financial aid. In comparison, welfare services are regarded as a universal right in other regions like Europe, where it is believed that all citizens should be able to obtain a minimal level of social support and well-being. We need to reform our economies and modernize our social protection systems. But an effective social protection system that helps those in need is not an obstacle to prosperity. It is indeed an indispensable element of it. Indeed, it is precisely those European countries with the most effective social protection systems and with the most developed social partnerships that are among the most successful and competitive economies in the world. Have you ever wondered how light appears when you flick a switch on the wall or turn a switch on a table or floor lamp? Like magic, light just appears and pleasantly illuminates a room with very little effort on our part. In reality, no magic is involved, but a lot of engineering is required. From the electrical circuits that supply energy to the lamp itself, engineers are involved in the process of artificial lighting. One of the important values of literature is that knowledge is our emotional life, the inner life that good review in their characters often gives us glimpses into some portion of ourselves. We can devote to laugh, cry, tremor, dream, ponder, shriek, or rick by simply turning a page inside of turning our lives upside down. Using more than 50 interviews, award-winning writer Danny Danziger creates a fascinating mosaic of the people behind New York's magnificent Metropolitan Museum of Art, from the aristocratic, acerbic director of the museum, Felipe de Montebello, to the curators who have a deep knowledge and passionate appreciation of their collections, from the security guards to the philanthropists who keep the museum's financial lifeblood flowing. Until fairly recent times, the origin of birds was one of evolution's great mysteries. This is no longer the case. Fossil evidence from China now conclusively proves that there is an evolutionary link between birds and several types of extinct prehistoric reptiles which lived millions of years ago, or in other words, dinosaurs. There are a number of tests available which can suggest if a person is telling the truth, but knowing which ones are accurate is not easy. A newly created test is claimed to be the most accurate yet in lie detection. However, questions have been raised about its accuracy and ethics. The department determines whether or not the candidate has passed the examination. In cases where an appearance for the final public oral examination would constitute a substantial financial hardship for the candidate, the Director of Graduate Studies may recommend to the Dean of the Graduate School that the examination be waived. Students believe that teacher is a person who always tells the truth, so they accept the facts and solutions without checking them. Students often do not know how to interpret the error messages or what to do to solve problems that are diagnosed. Debugging and testing are an essential skill, whether done with a sophisticated debugger or just by comparing actual outputs or results with expectations, as well as to have the whole picture of the problem and test properly the given solution from teacher. Chinese officials said the move came in response to market forces, which have reacted to Mr. Trump's tariff threats by pushing the value of the currency down. In an unusually blunt statement, the central bank put the blame for the currency fall on Mr. Trump's unilateralism and trade protectionism measures and the imposition of increased tariffs on China. Today's technological market is dominated by two contrasting business models. The generative and the non-generative models. The PCs, Windows and Macs of this world allow third parties to build upon and share through them. The non-generative model is more restricted. Appliances might work well, but the only entity that can change the way they operate is the vendor. Unions take the power out of the employer's hands on many issues. There are examples of cases where workers were engaging in sexual or racial harassment but were protected by their unions and allowed to keep their jobs. Poor workers and excellent workers often receive the same pay and raises, giving no reason for a person to work harder than necessary at their jobs. Beauty contests, whether it's Miss Universe or Miss Teen International, are demeaning to women and out of sync with the times. Opponents say that they are nothing more than symbols of decline. Since Australians Jennifer Hawkins and Lauren Eagle were crowned Miss Universe and Miss Teen International respectively, there has been a dramatic increase in interest in beauty pageants in this country. As long as humans have been building cities, wildlife has been fleeing from them. After all, cities are noisy, crowded and dangerous for animals including many birds. But we know that some birds do very well in urban areas. So in many cities, we have pigeons or doves, any kind of crow species. University is a lot more than just classes and exams. University is a concept that offers you a host of possibilities to develop both academically and personally. Find out about the different projects, clubs and societies that are in your university. You will definitely find something you are interested in. Also, getting involved in campus activities is always a good opportunity to meet new people at your university. Unlike the United Kingdom, which has taken a relatively restrictive approach to the possession of arms, the United States has taken a more lenient approach. In the United States, 3 models have evolved regarding the interpretation of the meaning of the right to bear and keep arms as delineated in the Second Amendment.